Hi, I'm Kathy, and welcome to Cathartic Conversations launch show. Today's topic is handling stress before and after the pandemic and recovery. This topic hits close to home for me as well. Though we traveled different roads to get here, our plights were similar in a lot of ways. Today we have a guest with 20 years, 19 years clean time, and whose life reflects the gratitude he has to still be alive by always sharing his love for God and his experience, strength, and hope. Please welcome Richard Lester to Cathartic Conversations podcast. Hey, Rich.
Hey, Kat.
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm fine. It's good to see you.
Good to be
And
seen.
I haven't seen you in over a decade, so it's really good to see you.
A
And
decade.
it's good to see that we're in the same spot.
Right, right,
So that's what I meant by my intro when I said we travel different roads,
right.
but it seemed like we was traveling parallel somewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I made a little snafu, a little mistake, and said that you had 20 years, but you're almost there.
Yeah, well, yeah. You're speaking into existence. It's all one day at a time, and I just thank God for keeping me. You know, um, part of what you invited me to share about is dealing with the stress and anxieties, not even from the pandemic, but that I've always dealt with, and the pandemic just really was a way of me being able to really see how desperately and I needed help, with dealing with those things, because sometimes when we get clean, we stop using substance, and then we're left to uh, deal with some of the other things that come along with using it, or the reasons why we use the substance.
Hmm.
And so I know, of course, every time I get
It's all right.
ready, yeah. And
It's
so
all right.
in the midst of the pandemic, I realized how important it is, like the mental health part of recovery, how important it is to really do that other part of recovery. So I thank God for you inviting me for a topic such as this one, and hopefully when we share, when we talk, that other people can really identify. Right? I always believe that, even though the whole room may not need to hear it, it's always somebody that needs to hear what's being said. So
That's
that's
true.
what my hope and wish is.
I believe that too. And me just hearing in the news, like not too long ago, that I didn't know what he passed from, but Ricky Smiley, the comedian Ricky Smiley's son.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that he battled, and Ricky's coming out of Ricky Smiley's mouth himself. He battled with addiction for a long time.
Right. Say OD.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you share or speak to a little bit of your journey to where you are now
Oh,
and
wow.
what kept you? Because I know that how important a personal relationship with God, even though it takes us a little time to get to that relationship, but that the first couple of calls that you hear from God to me when you are out there struggling, it's a whisper. It
Right.
starts as a whisper,
Right.
then to me a tornado, then an avalanche. Can you share with our viewers some of the things it took you to possibly wake up calls that got you to the state?
Oh man. Well, we talk about being spiritually awakened, and
Mm-hmm.
so one of my spiritual awakenings came when I was still in active
Mm-hmm.
usage. I was still actively using, and so I remember one day. I remember it like we're talking right now. I was in the midst of doing what I was doing, and I remember just breaking down and saying, and again, I didn't grow up in church or the mosque and, spiritual. I just didn't, it just wasn't in my household. I knew it was a God, or I believed it was a God, but that wasn't something that I practiced in my early years. So, when that happened, I believe that God allows us as human beings to, everybody has a different walk, and he talks to people in different ways. And so that day, as I look, I live forward, but I understand backwards, right? And so when I started understanding, like, oh, that was my spiritual awakening, right? Because then I realized, first of all, that I needed God. And second of all, that there was a God, right? And he really wanted the best for me. So that was like the beginning. And again, like I said, it was probably like a year and a half to 2 years later before I really just said, you know what, God, I know I didn't want to die like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know how to live.
Right.
And so I needed guidance. And
Mm-hmm.
so, not, so much, God uses people.
That's the truth.
And a lot of times, I mean, we get so spooky sometimes,
Yeah.
and I don't think we do it, intentionally trying to sound spooky, but God uses people. And so my journey with God, my spirituality, again, it's so I'm still learning so many things about God. So for
Mm-hmm.
me to say, like, okay, well, I'm at this point and I don't want to go no further. So
Right.
yeah, that's where it all began. It began, man, like early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
early 2000s. And so
Okay.
I'm just grateful to be where I am in my relationship with God. I'll tell you this, and I'll let you go.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for my relationship with God, see, because again, getting clean is one layer
That's right.
of my
Absolutely.
life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, using drugs and being out there and doing all the other stuff that comes with it.
Mm-hmm.
That was one layer of the onion.
Right.
And so once I peeled that layer, then another layer was there, and so, again, that's why it's a process, what I mean? And so, and it's all one day at a time. So I'm grateful for it. If I didn't have my relationship with God, I promise you I would have went back.
I believe that.
I
And I
would have
and that
went
and
back.
that and that's with me also. I
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah.
So Richard, how about the addict whose family has turned their back on them? Can you speak to the value of their lives and to the mere fact that they were born, that they matter and need to give themselves a chance to give it a chance to take that risk to get clean?
Well, I can speak to it, from a personal perspective,
Yeah,
and from just
clinical.
being in this field, right? Being in
Mm-hmm.
this field and dealing with the clinical side of it. First of all, don't ever give up on nobody. That would be my first recommendation to a family member who, of course, you get tired of dealing with dealing with the ups and downs of addicts' behaviors and things of that nature.
That's true.
But I will say, because you never know, nobody woke up one day and said, you know what, I want to be a crackhead. I
Mm-hmm.
want to be an alcoholic,
It's
right? I
true.
want to be a dope addict, you know what I mean? I want to be homeless. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it is an illness, right? And it is a source of being able to deal with things, from the street level, because then you got the clinical level where you're on drugs, you're using drugs, but the drugs are supposed to keep you stabilized. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, when you're dealing with people who are still struggling, and family members who, to be honest with you, my mom was the last person that really, I believe, that really believed that there was hope for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I kept on doing the same thing over and over. I would go to the county jail, and the county jails was my detox
Mm-hmm.
centers, right? And I thank God for the county jails, right? I thank God for the police today, because I needed to be rescued, right? And I believe every time I went in and I came out better, even though I still had some of my old ideals. I just got better. So speaking into family members that may be at that point where they just don't think it's going to get better, just hold on, what I mean, and understand that this is the time where the spirituality has to take place, right? Like you just got to allow a person or people to go through their process, right?
That's true.
Because we talk about rock bottoms and recovery, right? Everybody's rock bottom is different.
Hmm.
Some people, may have had a car accident, so they stopped drinking. That was their rock bottom,
Right.
right? Some people, experience prison. Some people experience hardship with health issues and all different. There's so many different ways that we come to our rock bottom, or we come to a place of, you know, um, just wanting to change. So my thing, speaking to family members, I always tell people don't give up on people, because right when you give up is probably when they really need you the most.
That's the truth.
They need you the most, because
Mm-hmm.
believe me, deep down inside they may be acting contrary to the person that you once knew.
That's right.
But understand that they're dealing with an issue,
Mm-hmm.
and you may not know nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
But stay vigilant, stay prayerful, and just now don't go for the nonsense.
Yeah.
don't
Yeah. I
don't
got
become
you.
don't become enabler.
Exactly.
Let them go through their process
Mm-hmm.
and let them know that somebody still loves them, because the love is what's going to draw them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So don't give up on people.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
That was good, Rich. And to go a little further in there, this question came to me from somebody, and it was like, could you possibly discuss the fact that generation to generation, some of us have witnessed the cycles play out. Sometimes it's whole families, and they said sometimes that's where we lose hope. We think we have to take part in that cycle. We think this is a part of our foundation. It's a part of our bloodline. Can It's probably a repetitive question. It sounds different. Can you say something about cycles are made to be broken? Can you speak about that and
Oh wow.
how we are individuals when we come to the earth and our purposes are bigger than the cycles that we are born into sometimes?
Absolutely. So, one of the things I always tell people, that blaming people would never change anything, right? And my parents did the best they can do. That's what helps me.
Hmm.
It doesn't excuse whether I feel certain type of way about certain things,
Right.
right? But the good thing that I thank God for is that my parents are still around. So a lot of the conversations that I want to have, I'm still able to have some of those conversations, right? And it takes courage, because you got to remember, when you ask a question, you can't determine what the answer is going to be, right?
That's
It
right.
may be an answer that you're not ready to have,
Hmm.
or to accept.
That's right.
And so, generationally, if you do study, right? Like if I do study on my family history, right? Somewhere along the line, somebody may have dropped the ball, right?
Hmm.
And again, I'm not one who who does a lot of pointing fingers. When I point a finger, I'm really pointing a finger to try to come up with a solution to change,
Right.
right? I'm not really pointing a finger to belittle nobody or say, oh, it's their fault because this happened or that happened.
Hmm.
I think a lot of times we choose to do that because we don't have the courage
Hmm.
to face the things that are true, right? The truth is our parents did the best they could do, and yes, I know there's cases when some people just don't,
Hmm.
but I choose to believe that my parents did the best they can do. And so one of the things I would say is that the change that you're looking for or you're expecting, let it start with you.
Exactly. I
Let that
believe that
change
too.
start. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's it.
Exactly.
So I knew, in my addiction, my oldest child, she caught the brunt of me not being there, right?
Right.
So I play my own tape, right? I don't
Hmm.
play my mom's tape. I don't play my dad's tape, right? I play my own tape and I say, wow, some of the things that affected me or I wish that I would have had,
Right.
I turned around and didn't give those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
In one case, right? And then so God allowed me to have another child after in the beginning, well, he called a year of me still running, but he was too young to really understand it,
Right.
but now, matter of fact, he called 2 years because he's 21 now. But the difference in the children is that my daughter, she didn't believe in herself,
Right.
right? Because daddy didn't tell her she was beautiful. Daddy
Mm-hmm.
didn't tell her, that she was great and all the things that will enrich her to
Right.
believe that she can do anything. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, has daddy tried to make up for the time? Of course I do, but it's something about getting a person when they're young and placing that type of stuff, speaking those type of affirmations into their life when they're young. And so some of the things that didn't happen for me, or I didn't do even in my daughter's life, I try to do in my son's life. And still, if you talk to my son, he'll tell you, well, my dad, he probably gives me everything. Like I give him everything. And I have to explain to him. I said, first of all, tomorrow is not
Mm-hmm.
promised. And so when you deal with generational curses, right, I tell them about my shortcomings, right? I don't use my mom or my dad. So some of the things that, well, one of the generational curses was broken in my bloodline because my son graduated.
Right.
My
Right.
son is about to graduate, not from high school, but also graduating from college. So a generational curse was broke right there, right? Why? Because I believe that, me changing my life,
Uh-huh.
right, my world, would I do I wish I would have done things different? Of course I do. But 2020 is hindsight, I'm just grateful that, my son is where he is, right?
Let me speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to speak to that
Okay.
because when you when you said something about the differences between your son and your daughter,
Right.
it hit me in the middle of my square in the middle of my chest.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something. When God allowed you and seen that you was heeding the call, we already know where we fell short when we were doing what we was doing and our children were lacking in, like you said, that confirmation of love, that encouragement to a young girl as she's in her formative years. But trust me, at every stage that you've went through since you've been in recovery, those are enrichment stages that you can give her from where you are at right at this moment. You can enrich her from where you are now. Yes, you're giving her something now that is going to be so valuable to her as she's growing up into she's a woman as she's
40
continuing
years old.
but you're still
Oh, absolutely.
you're
No,
still
I mean,
you're
she
still
tells me,
enriching.
that's something that's beautiful. You said that
Yeah.
because one of the things my daughter tells me, she's like, Daddy, I brag about you so
See.
much, just about your journey, and I just talk about like what you do for me now. So I'm with you 100%. It's never too late. That's another thing we can speak to, right?
That
It's
enrichment
never
piece,
too
oh
late.
my God, I'm just glad you
It's
used that
never
word.
too late. Yeah, but you have to. It takes courage
It
to
takes
go and have
courage,
those conversations.
and it also takes the willingness for
Right,
our children
right,
to want to hear us at this stage because
absolutely.
I dealt with the same thing. I mean, Amir, that's my youngest son, is 12. Now, my children who are well in their late 20s, early 30s, they said Amir is getting the best part of me
Mm,
that they didn't get.
right,
But they also see the enrichment and the growth in me, and they're trying to get to know this person now. So they agreed to start from where I'm at today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, like you said, it's a partnership, right? So I think my daughter goes through stages of she forgives me, but then she looks in the mirror and sees where she is. And so I always have to remind her. I said, sweetheart, listen, you're my firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, God may have kept us apart because of the state of mind that I was in,
Exactly.
right? So even though it seems like it was so bad, it could have been worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just grateful that like you said, it's never too late, and it's a decision. Once they're grown,
Yeah.
I said, sweetheart, daddy can't make you do nothing. Now,
Mm-hmm.
my son, on the other hand, he'll tell you a different story.
Right.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So, I can't make her do nothing, right? I can only suggest to her today. And today, thank God, that my suggestions are not only valid, but they're wanted. My daughter wants, when she's going through a tough time, right? She wants me to give my input on how she should go about it, right?
Right.
Or how she should deal with things. So again, generational curses, right? You got to be the change that you're looking for, right? Because it's so easy to point that finger,
Absolutely.
you know,
I
and
agree with
and
that.
nobody grows from pointing the finger.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Rich. All right, Rich, here's another one. Now, if you travel to any year in a time machine, what year would you choose and why?
Time of shame.
In a time machine.
Oh, time machine.
What year would you choose and why? I'll give you a second.
Okay, if I traveled in a time machine, um, wow, there's years that I will go back and change.
You got one.
Okay, uh, so okay, if I could travel in a time machine and go back and change the year,
Mm-hmm.
oh man, I probably was 24 years old
Mm.
when I started venturing, experimenting,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, um, drug use. So if I can go back and change in a year,
Mm-hmm.
man, it would be that year that I was like 24, because it was like I was working.
Mm-hmm.
I worked early in my youthful years. In my younger years, I
Right.
worked, and so at that time, I believe I was working at Middlesex Hospital, and some of my buddies was in the streets. I wasn't really in the streets like that right there, but I started experimenting. So that would be a year
Mm-hmm.
that I wish I can go back and change, because that year was pivotal for me because
So early 20s, you say?
early twenties,
Mm-hmm.
early twenties, I would definitely have done some things differently.
Mm.
Yeah,
Good answer. Good, very good answer. Because I think I feel the same way. Early 20s was pivotal for me too. Um, and me not knowing who I was at the time, that was a part of the seeking,
right.
and it went along with that. So yeah, my early 20s too. All right. Well, Rich, introvert or extrovert?
Um,
And that's self-explanatory.
but I'm a good
Why would I
introvert.
ask that question?
I'm a good introvert because I can interact.
Right.
I'm not one of those people that because again from drug use, right, and getting into a whole new world, right,
Mm-hmm.
in my 20s, like you start off like everybody cracked me up when they said he was always popping. Nah, you was green once upon a time, but
Exactly.
you learned because you had to relearn to be in order to live in that lifestyle.
That's
You had
true.
to now become something that you wasn't created to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, it caused me because I was a happy-go-lucky guy early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thinking that you love me the way I loved you, you'll do for me what I do for you.
Right.
And boy, that was is from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it caused me to say, whoa, you know, I need to really, I take a person through the sifter. Any people, anybody that's my associate today, I don't use the word friend
Right.
loosely, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that comes from trusting people, the introvert personality. It comes from lack of trust in people. So I learned how to, you know, again, those characteristics come from being let down.
Wow. I hear you. And I didn't know you was an introvert either.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even identify you as that if somebody would have asked me.
no, I am.
Wow.
Yeah, I am.
Now that's a fact I didn't know.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
like spending time. I don't feel like I'm losing nothing by being with myself.
I could consider myself that. And we two different kind, but I
Right,
consider
right,
myself.
right.
Alrighty. So Rich, okay. I consider myself an empathic personality, right?
Hmm.
I describe it as having a great deal of empathy for people and very sensitive to the condition of others. How do you discern the difference between helping and enabling? Look at that. Enabling.
Well, it definitely is a fine line, and again, being in this field, in the recovery field, you learn early on. Well, I remember why, you know, because I believe there's safety in a multitude of counsel, right? I believe that. I believe that I'm not the sharpest knife in the cabinet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to surround myself with people who are sharper than I am, right? And so, in this one encounter with a Christian counselor that I was seeing at the time, one of the things she said to me was, in the field, make sure that you keep a filter,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that you won't own other people's stuff,
Wow. I hear you. I hear
right?
you.
Because it'll cause you to be burnt out. So empathy and enabling, right? It's a fine line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you may, okay, I can speak from experience. So this younger Indian guy that I was mentoring for 13 years, he has 13 years of sobriety, right?
Mm-hmm.
It became more of he was like a little brother to me,
Right.
right? And so, you know, even though we came from different parts of the world, and I just believe that God brought us together,
Right.
right? And so, some of the things that I was, or that we allowed, I allowed because I was older and I had a little more wisdom than he did. Um, I knew it was some things that I needed to tell him, but because I was trying to spare his feelings,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't tell him.
Right.
Right? So I was becoming an enabler to him,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was compassionate and all that type of stuff. And so one day, you know, we had, well, I like to say he had, you know, a blow up, and it was then, you know, because I knew where it was coming from, so I
Uh-huh.
didn't take it personal, and I said, it's time for you to find somebody else to take you to the next level.
Mm. I like the way you said that.
Right. Yeah, it's time for you to find somebody to take you to the next level. We
Okay.
have, in that part of our relationship has expired
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not helping
Right.
you, right? And so I had to, first of all, because I think I know something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I had to realize that, yo, you know something, but right now you're not helping him,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you have to give up that job and just and be happy, first of all, that didn't cause you guys to fall apart. You know what I mean? So it's a very thin line, and you have to
It
just
is.
ask yourself, when am I being an enabler? Like, if you know somebody, like, say, if I have a mentee
Mm-hmm.
and I know they're doing unhealthy things,
Right.
and I don't say nothing, I'm enabling that person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing them more harm than good.
That's true.
Even though, you know, as the messenger, you sometimes get shot, you know, for telling the truth,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, you know.
That's the
But
truth.
yeah, you know, that line is sometimes it's easy to get it mixed up. So, you know, you just got to use wisdom, you know. when you're dealing with that.
So you got to use your own discernment,
You got to use
your own
discernment.
wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay, Rich.
What?
Have you thought about what's your legacy, and if so, what do you want it to be?
Oh wow. Well, the rest of my life, from now on, this life that I have left to live, it's all about, as you can see when I sing Your Little Son, I'm speaking life into younger people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, not just my children or my grandchildren, but or my nieces and my nephews. Um, but I believe that when I was ripping and running, and this has nothing to do with what you, well, it does have something to do with what you're asking me. So this one day, this brother, his son died.
Uh-huh.
He was 29 years old. And I was calling to offer my condolences.
Mm-hmm.
And we hung up. I said, phew. He called me right back. He said, Rich, would you speak, would you say something at the funeral?
Wow.
Now he's 29,
Mm-hmm.
right? 31 years younger than me. I'm like, what? So right away, I had to get into prayer. I had to get in God's face. And I said, God, what could I say to these young people
Mm-hmm.
who probably seen me acting a fool in my addiction?
Which is even
And
better.
one of the things that God gave me was just simply tell them you're sorry. Apologize to them. Don't give them the 10-point plan on how to be successful in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we do that, once we get a little breath of fresh air, we begin to tell people how it works for us,
Mm-hmm.
and not take into account that it works for everybody differently. You know what I mean? And so one of the things that my legacy will always, one of the things that I'm trying to build in, leaving the earth when I'm gone,
Mm-hmm.
is change, right? My story,
Right.
my story of hope, right? That is never too late, because some people may tell you it's too late,
Mm-hmm.
like you missed your call or you can't do this. So when I open my mouth, it's really, when I tell my story, I'm telling my story because the good thing about God is He's not a respecter of people,
Mm-hmm.
right? We put all these different hats on God, right? But God is not a respecter of persons. What He did for one person, He'll do it for you. So
That's right.
my story is always my legacy. When I leave, when I die, I want people to remember. Like, first of all, He cared about the underdog.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Like, I care about the underdog. The underdog matters to me more than the person who was sitting on the hill.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an underdog type of person. I'm always, I always want to be able to speak to that person that feels like there's no hope.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my legacy. One of the things that I want to leave as, um, and that's from a broad perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, hope, legacy of hope that is never too late.
That's a nice legacy. It's like mine. Mine is the same thing. Since this whole journey started with me, and I really started figuring out who I was as a person. Um, I think that was something that always radiated from me
Right.
because I started getting people in my inboxes.
Mm-hmm.
Can I talk to you? People just pulling at me, and to not really pulling at me, but just asking me for my advice and asking me, can I share with them, what do I think about this? That's what started me, because I was like, this is not by coincidence. This is God showing up in my life, and He's
Mm-hmm.
directing me, and He's guiding me, and He's showing me in areas that I am needed. You see, because I have a tendency of thinking of people always trying to think that just because you have a lot of clean time under your belt,
Right.
you're showing up with, with vibrato. You're showing up trying to trying to shine, trying to be, uh, live your life basically in ego. No, I'm motivated by God. I'm motivated by that inkling that I always say it comes from my chest because I could feel it burning in my chest when I'm giving people advice. It's like I'm not coming from my head, but I'm coming from here. I know that's my spirit speaking to me. So, um, legacy will definitely be given back. Will definitely be the voice from the for the voiceless because I was the voiceless. So, I like your answer, Rich.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, where are we at now? Um, we did that. We did the generation to generation. Um, we did believing in God is at the top of the page. Um, mm, wow, this is a nice one. I didn't even see that up here. Okay, it says here, was there a time when you noticed that you were in denial before you had that epiphany or that awakening that started you going in the right direction?
Mm, in denial? Nah.
Never in
I
denial.
mean, in areas, yeah, yeah. I think every human being on the face of the earth is in denial about something. But yeah, so ask that again. Let me hear you correct.
I think this question was formulated for, you know how sometimes we get that whisper from God
Hmm.
and we say, "No, you're not calling me right now. I'm coming later on." That type of scenario.
Nah, again,
I know it's
two
you,
years
but I'll be
later,
there later.
right? It was 2 years later. Well, I can't even say I know it was God because again, I didn't grow up in
Hmm.
that spiritual setting, like going to church, mosque, and places like that. So
That's interesting. You say
yeah,
that.
I did. I didn't. I met God when I got clean.
Really?
The same day. The same day I walked into a church service, and when I walked up and gave my life to God, it was like I had the conversation, and again, like I'm talking to you, I was like, well, I tried everything else, and
Hmm.
I heard one time, that you could put your misery at the door, and
Right.
if this didn't work, you can always return back to your misery.
Hmm.
So, yeah, no, it was like the spiritual awakening was him walking me through the realities of my life.
Wow.
The realities was if I didn't change,
Hmm.
the end was near.
Hmm.
That was my reality.
Right.
And to be honest with you, and very, very frank with you, I didn't mind leaving.
Hmm.
I didn't mind dying.
Wow.
I was tired of being who I was. And so when people, they put so many conditions on having a relationship with God, and again, it's different for everybody. But for me, it was like, okay, I tried this. I
Hmm.
I, I went up there, the lady. It was all set up. I was in Richmond, Virginia, and I walked in this healing ministry, just going, being nosy, and they began to pray and stuff like that. And this lady who I don't know from a can of spray paint,
Hmm.
she she gestured to me and offered me to come up. And as I was going up, I was set on my differences, because this mind, we always like to, think intellectually we got to understand everything.
Hmm.
Well, with this relationship with God, because God is a spirit, what I mean? It takes away from all your intellect, right?
Mm.
And so, being that I was like what I like to call, I was at my rock bottom, and I couldn't go nowhere else but up. And so when I gave myself to God, um, listen, it was just one of those things where That's my monument, and I will always remember that, right? And so, it's a reading that we read. Matter of fact, it's in the literature of AA. It said, God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves.
Right.
Right? Getting clean was the easy part.
That's right.
Right? That's
That's
the
right.
easy part, right? Because all you got to do is really just do the same thing you did yesterday, today.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go to the liquor store. Don't go on the block. Don't, you know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Don't go to the doctors trying to get no whole lot of prescriptions.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And just be mindful
Mm-hmm.
that you know who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know who you are, excuse me.
It's okay.
You know who you are as a person. And so, man, all those questions are just good, but again, like one of the reasons why I really accepted this invitation was because that a lot of people won't go to church because of whatever reason they have, right? A lot of people won't go to NA, right? It's almost like we always got these dividers, right? Oh, I ain't going to NA because I used to drink. Mm-hmm. Or I ain't going to AA because I ain't never do no drugs. We always have these little dividers in society, right? Mm-hmm. And it makes it harder for us to really just settle down and say, get in your own personal space. Mm-hmm. You got to get in your own personal space. And like this canvas that's back here, right, that's empty. Right. It has nothing on it, right? Mm-hmm. But in life, that's not an empty canvas. My life is not an empty canvas, that's right. Right? That's right. So my life speaks to me. Mm-hmm. Right? It's going to speak to you. All the time. Life is going to speak all to the time. And nobody has to tell you that you need to get some help.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? That's right. And so my life
that's why I was really curious when you said that where you met God at. Right. Because if you know that life speaks to you all the time, that's him speaking. Right. That's him speaking.
That's God speaking to you, right?
If I tell anybody, if you reflect back, you'll know that was him speaking.
He was talking. But so many times, we don't want to do. We think we got to give up something in order to do God's will. And mm-hmm. God said, "Come as you are." Right.
That's right.
And we put conditions. Today's society put conditions on how God moves.
Good intro, because I was about to ask you. Today is different than our day.
Right.
Oh my God.
Right.
So I want you to speak before we close mm-hmm. to this. Oh man! Every time I think about it, my eyes start welling up. Speak to this drug that's taking life in leaps and bounds more than our time, more than our era. Speak to. We don't even know that severity, Rich. We don't know that one. We got out of it. Thank God we were saved before we even delved into that. This is something that's over our head, but I think that you can pull some words up and speak to anybody right now that's out there struggling with this fentanyl pandemic. I'm gonna call it a pandemic that's taking lives in leaps and bounds. This say anything that comes to your heart and from your spirit.
Well, of course, the fentanyl crisis.
Yes.
They call it a crisis.
It is a crisis. Right. It definitely is a crisis.
The names always change. It's funny how the names change when it affects a certain people, but I ain't even gonna touch that. But so fentanyl, first of all, it helps me because I'm in my mirror, right? Fentanyl says to me that, Rich, if you go back, you won't stand a chance. Because mm-hmm. you're greedy and you're selfish and you like to do things from that introvert place, right? Mm-hmm. But to speak to it today, I would just tell people from my experience, right? I watched a couple people go through the withdrawals of fentanyl.
Oh, okay.
And it's crazy.
I can't even imagine.
It's crazy, and it's like it fills my heart with so much more gratitude, right? Because first of all, thank God, but for the grace of God, there go I, right? Mm-hmm. So today, I would speak to a person that is struggling or maybe thinking about using. If you never used it, don't use it because it's highly addictive.
It's a
It,
good time to plug your spot too.
yeah, yeah, okay, and so even thank
You're
you for that,
welcome.
right? Thank you for that space. And so even with the ministry that I do in the church, it's called Arm Ministry,
Hmm.
and we meet every Tuesday night. As a matter of fact, this Tuesday today is going to be our first meeting, and we're going to do Zoom, but we're also going to meet in person
Wonderful.
at Abundant Life Family Worship Church in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Hmm.
And the time is going to be at 7 o'clock. We meet from 7 to 9
Okay.
p.m.
Okay.
every Tuesday night. But one of the things that I will speak to about the fentanyl, if you never use, please do not use. If you are currently using, then I would implore you to get the help, get the professional help that you need.
Hmm.
You got to remember that fentanyl is a killer, first of all, right? And if a doctor gives you fentanyl, right, he's usually using it to put you to sleep in the operation or something like that. So
Right.
it's so serious this drug today. But because, like you said, right, I'm an old timer. I lived in the AIDS pandemic. I lived in the crack cocaine pandemic,
Hmm.
and so fentanyl is a different drug, but
Yeah.
it's all the same. It's almost a conspiracy.
Yeah. We ain't got enough time for
it's almost
that.
it's almost and so if you don't use, please don't try that. And again, I just thank you for this opportunity, though, Kat. So
Rich, thank you for coming to my launch. Thank you for coming to the Cathartic Conversations podcast. And before you leave, I created this board, and you used the word hope a couple of times in our interview. And the board is called the Board of Hope and Perseverance. Um, I would love for you to sign the board, and under your name, put a word or a quote of hope or of perseverance, whatever you would like, and speak it aloud so the universe, you can send it up to the universe and it could be heard.
okay, I will do that. We got so I'm gonna do the right corner.
Oh, yeah, you got them. Yes. Oh, that pen should have been darker. It's light. What's the word, Rich?
Keep pressing.
I love it.
Keep
I
pressing.
love it.
No matter what, keep pressing.
And that is the end of our broadcast. And I thank all the viewers for watching. And hopefully, I will see you next week on Cathartic Conversations podcast. My name is Kathy. Peace.
Amen.